online as well. So we are here, giving a few seconds for folks to start popping in. But while you guys pop in, let us know your branch of service, the time you served. We're coming at you live with something different, something new today. So I'm just going to sit back here for a second, let folks start chiming in. But please start commenting. Let us know the branch of service you're in. We want to recognize you. We want to thank you for your service. But I'm going to sit here for a second, let some folks come in. What's going on, Mr. Reese? Why are we? We're here together today. uh, Brian, let me just make sure they can hear us. I think someone said the audio was a little low, so let's just. All right, so let's see. I think we should be good now. Um, Mary's just doing a quick check here because of the delay. So let's see if we are able to be heard here. Let's see. Give it 1 second. Yes, yeah, the raw file is recorded as well, so we have that. So that's good. Um, can hear DP, not Brian. That's odd. Let's see here. Like, yeah, I could hear you. All right, so they can hear me, muffled, intermittent. Let's just give it a second here with the lag because sometimes it takes a second. All right, so Mary says she can hear me, but on your side, um, let's see. Um, Let me double check here something.
Two folks, post your roll call. Let us know your branch of service, dates of service. As DP said, we want to recognize you.
Okay, I think. How about now? Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us. Um,
I'll keep talking here too,
yeah.
just so we can get clarification on sound. We're streaming, just so everybody knows, we're streaming through like 8 different things,
Mm-hmm.
and we're blasting this live
Yeah, we're good.
across the
We're good now.
socials.
We're good now. So Jeff said he hears you fine. So we're cooking.
Good,
So
awesome. Thanks for doing that, DP.
yeah. So for those that kind of missed a little bit or saw some lip reading, we are literally live in a few different places right now. So we definitely wanted to come and do something a little different. So to rewind a little bit, we just wanted to one, recognize everybody's branch of service. So please type in the time you serve, the years you serve. We want to definitely recognize you. Thank you for your service. It's PTSD Awareness Month. You saw the title. We're talking about PTSD and our community. So Brian, to ask you again, why am I here on your slot today? What's going on here? Usually you're by yourself here. What's different? Something looks a little bit different.
Yeah, well, we got better looking now that we got some of my Army brethren DP here. So
Heyo.
here's what you're going to see, fellow vets. We're making a shift. This is a bit of a pivot in our movement, and what we've come to realize, and really how our movement, and that's what we call VA Claims Insider, it's a movement of veterans helping veterans worldwide. It's less about me now. 2 or 3 years ago, you saw all the branding was very Brian Reese heavy and focused, with some VA Claims Insider, sprinkled in that. We're shifting. So you're going to start to see our social channels get changed over to VA Claims Insider. Again, this is about the brand. This is about the movement. This is about you. Okay. Now, I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry. I'm still here. I'm still at the helm. But what we're really going to be doing is showcasing our team. And so David Pineda on this call, he's a veteran master coach, Army disabled vet. He's also a former elite client who then, decided, hey, I want to quit my full-time government job and come on and do this because I'm passionate about serving fellow vets. And so he's the CEO and leader of the VACI Champions, okay, the Champions team, and they're just doing incredible work. So we're going to start showcasing our teammates. You've already started to see more integration and syndication of our content across multiple social channels and other Facebook pages. You're going to see more of that in the future. And what we're also doing is we're bringing you the content that you're telling us that you want. And so when we've done surveys, for example, inside of the mastermind group, what we're hearing is we want more. We want more of these open, honest, raw, real, vulnerable conversations, okay? And so that's pivoting right now into June being PTSD Awareness Month, okay? And it's PTSD Awareness Month nationwide. It's not just about military veterans, it's for everybody. And, some shocking stats, there's over 8 million Americans who have post-traumatic stress disorder. I would actually bet that number's probably triple or quadruple that, because I think so many people have post-traumatic stress disorder and they don't even know it, right? Or they're hiding it, or they're embarrassed by it, which, DP and I will talk about and share our own personal stories. But, then you look at the veterans, right? I mean, there's over 2 million disabled veterans right now living in the United States that have some type of a mental health condition. Now, it's maybe not specific to PTSD, although that's a large portion of it, especially as we've come through OIF and OEF, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom. But the other thing we're going to kind of myth bust today is that PTSD is so much more than just about combat. And so many veterans kind of carry this burden of, well, I wasn't deployed, right? I wasn't kicking in doors. I wasn't shooting at the enemy. So, how could I possibly have PTSD? Well, we're going to talk about some of those other stressors today, okay? So again, we're seeing a shift in the brand here, but June is PTSD Awareness Month. So we're getting raw, real, open, and vulnerable today about your PTSD. Okay.
So one thing I would say is one, thanks, Brian, for letting me join you today on your live. This is a process that started a while back. So a quick fun fact for everyone here. So I met Brian Reese, I would say at least virtually. It was 2017 in a group when he started VA Claims Insider. When you were in another group, and he's like, "I'm going to start this movement," and so forth. And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So I come on over. In 2017, I do what most people did, right? I just sat there and just kind of looked, right? I didn't want to jump in. I was kind of like on the fence. I thought I could do something on my own. And the mastermind was small. I think we had, we were what, under maybe 200 around that time. We used to have Friday phone calls. Brian would do a call with folks on Fridays. And then it grew, right? And then, went to the elite route, went ahead and got to the point of, getting the rating compensation that I deserved, not knowing how to do it, right? I thought I could do it, tried it for a year, that was a fail. And I said, let me just stop looking at stuff and stop seeing people win, right? Because like many of you guys, what I did was I was watching. I was literally there watching someone say, I won. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do it on my own. I just take the information and do something. And no, the elite was the best thing that happened, because finally I was able to go ahead and get things going. Fast forward, get the rating I deserved, and went through the process. And I saw that it was an announcement mid 2018 when they were looking for VCEs. And I was like, man, maybe one day. And fast forward to December, reached out to Brian. We had a conversation. It was like, I had shared with Richard that I was interested in maybe helping out. And Brian called me up and says, I hear you want to help out, so I'll counter your help and say you should come on board and be a VCE. And I say, I don't know if I'm the best one for this. I'll help in other capacities. And you believed in me, gave me an opportunity to come in, not thinking much of it outside of helping. And literally in a year and a half, it went from me and myself doing this part time to literally now running a team with 27 amazing individuals, right? We started as average Joes, and average Joe's is what I identified with, right? I'm just an average guy. There's nothing special about me. I don't have a particular set of, skills or anything like that. But ultimately, I wanted to get to the point of saying, hey, I want to just pay it forward, right? So I identify as an average Joe. And what happened was, it was Brian to a degree, the team started growing and he challenged me, right? And I think that in life, you need people to challenge you. And he was like, you're not average. You're not average Joes, right? I understand what you're linking that to, but you're doing yourself a disservice. You're more than that. And, it kind of floored me, because I'm thinking I'm in my bubble. I'm happy. I have a few folks with me. And then we rebranded and identified that, we are average, people like you all, right? We're veterans helping veterans. But on my side, I identified and recognized that we had to stand up and be the champion for someone else, right? I couldn't do this by myself. It was when Brian put together this company that helped me to actually move forward, right? I couldn't do this by myself. I needed the skill set, the strategy, the medical evidence, the support, the team, the community, the mastermind. And fast forward, it's like, wait a second, that's what we are for others. So VACI Champions, my team, we're champions of the average Joes. We're champions of ourselves. When we do what we do, we're reaching out to ourselves, right? The same way Brian did it for us. And we're going to talk about the PTSD aspect, because I won't take Brian's point, but VA Claims Insider saved his life, right? And all he did was basically pay it forward. And in my capacity, that's what I'm trying to emulate and do on my side with our team. And we're championing the rights for veterans that feel that it's over for them, right? They're average people. They don't deserve more. They feel someone else deserves something better. That's not the case. And for someone like myself, who literally, as a retiring law enforcement officer, I know the Second Amendment situation. I know all the stigmas about PTSD, been there, done all that stuff. And I can tell you that coming to a place of being open, being honest, and owning your truth, especially with it being PTSD Awareness Month, that's huge. I literally walked away from a career where I was, on the upward trend, right? And like most people say, hey, Brian, you know what? I don't want to lose my gun. I don't want to lose the job. I shouldn't do these things. And the reality is that I had to value my health above a title or an identity, right? Many of us left the military and just transitioned into something else to have that identity, but the badge and the gun didn't make me or identify who I am. So I went through an adjustment period, right? Of like, what do I do now? And I'm grateful, eternally grateful to Brian because he gave me the opportunity to say, hey, you could serve in this capacity in our movement. And I didn't see a place for myself, right? And fast forward to be here, speaking with you, having this live, and being able to show the community what we're going to be doing moving forward and the next evolution of VA Claims Insider. This is one of those once in a lifetime opportunities where you can actually, do what you love and do it every day and get up with passion, purpose, help people, and be able to share your story. So to take it back to Brian, that's how I got to this point, and I'll share my PTSD story in a bit. But to rewind, right before I found you, uh, as a veteran yourself, Brian, having PTSD, you've said it before, but I think there's new people out there that may be hearing our voices. What did VA Claims Insider truly mean for you, impactfully for your life, before anybody else even knew what this was?
Yeah, you're gonna make me tear up, man. Thank you for sharing that. So you've maybe heard me say this before, maybe not. I know we've got some folks who are probably on the fence watching this live right now, or maybe you're watching the replay. Welcome to you too, and you might be wondering if this is real, right? Is this company real? What are they all about? What's flowing through our veins? Service, honor, sacrifice, integrity, teamwork, right? I mean, our core values spell out the acronym ELITE, okay? And what does that mean, right? What do our core values mean? Empathy is the E. That's truly listening and understanding and relating to each other and fellow veterans who are most often dealing with undiagnosed or maybe diagnosed mental health conditions, right? And then the L, right, is learning. We have a learning culture here. We're constantly striving to learn more, be more, grow, right? Good is never enough. We're striving to be excellent in everything that we do. Integrity, right? Without integrity, none of these other core values mean anything. Teamwork, that's the T. That's what we're doing right here. We're showcasing teamwork right now by having DP here. We've also got a whole bunch of teammates in the background helping out and commenting and encouraging y'all in the community. So it truly does take an army. It takes incredible teamwork to be able to serve veterans in the way that we do. And then finally, enthusiasm. Everything that we do, we try to do with enthusiasm, even on our bad days. And this is a great dovetail into me telling some of my story about PTSD that might relate to some of you. And it might not. That's okay too. But I have a lot of bad days. I'm not just this guy who runs this uber successful movement. I have a lot of days where I may not get out of bed until after 10 a.m., right? I don't know about you, but I don't sleep well, right, at all. I've had pretty severe insomnia for a very long time, as most veterans do. A lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of panic, a lot of anger, right? A lot of mood adjustments. And you've heard me talk about this before as well, that yes, June is PTSD Awareness Month, and we're talking about that today, but a lot of veterans have multiple mental health conditions diagnosed, as do I, right? The very first diagnosis that I ever received was actually on my deployment. I was in Kandahar, Afghanistan, in 2011. And literally, I'm walking into CAF, Kandahar Airfield Role 2, the mental health clinic. CAF is one of the main jump-off points in RC South of Afghanistan, if anybody's ever been deployed to Afghanistan. A lot of the men and women who took bad hits out at various FOBs and COPs in the South, they would be choppered in through CAF. CAF had a full ER, full trauma unit. And so that, coupled with the constant indirect fire, right? We took a lot of rockets, a lot of mortars. I got to a place on deployment that was pretty scary, right? I wasn't sleeping, and basically to the point of having a complete breakdown. And I was so scared to go get help, right? I mean, I'm still wearing the uniform. I literally had just pinned on captain. I was a first lieutenant when I deployed. I pinned on captain in theater. And I felt weak. I was embarrassed about what was happening to me physically, but I couldn't sleep. I was literally like a zombie. So my work performance was atrocious. I couldn't even concentrate. And thank God, a buddy of mine, Brian, who we actually were cadets together in college. We played hockey together in college. One of my best friends to this day, right? One of my real only friends to this day, true friends. And he encouraged me to go get help, to go to mental health, right? Even if it cost me my career or cost me my deployment, because it maybe would have cost me my life, right? And so you start to kind of play those scenarios in your brain of what's more important, my life or my career. And so I finally marched in there. CAF Roll 2, I saw an Army psychiatrist, and I remember literally begging him not to give me a diagnosis, right? I mean, the stigma, the stigma of the label of a mental health condition, I couldn't stomach the thought, right, of being labeled as less than, of being labeled as adjustment disorder, depression, anxiety, and whatever, an anxiety disorder, a depressive disorder. There's multiple conditions that veterans can have, right? And thank God he made it a comfortable place for me to say, Brian, look, maybe it's just an adjustment disorder, right? So, of course, it was PTSD, right? But thank God he was like, hey, adjustment disorder with depressed mood. This guy's just got a little fatigue going on, a little combat fatigue, and he got me some help with medications that worked up and down for a bit while I was deployed, but ultimately saved my deployment by going through that therapy. And the part that I think is interesting is nobody knew. I didn't tell anybody. I was so embarrassed that, here I am, the leader of a team in Afghanistan, and every month I'm walking, the 500 yards down to the Roll 2 mental health clinic while I'm overseas, while I'm on deployment, to see a psychiatrist and to get help. I didn't want anybody to know. I was so embarrassed and so ashamed. And so thank God, got through the deployment, got home, and the whole challenge began again, and it was just magnified, times 1,000. And that's usually what happens, whether it's a combat trauma or a non-combat trauma, like a car accident or a military sexual assault, or one of your brothers or sisters takes their own life, through a suicide situation, and you carry that guilt and shame. Maybe it's physical abuse. Maybe it's harassment by a supervisor. There's lots of things that can trigger the level of a stressor that can bring on post-traumatic stress disorder. It's not just combat, right? That's a common myth, is that, well, I wasn't in combat.
So it doesn't count, and that's not the case. Yep.
Yeah, it's the non-combat situations can be worse.
Yep.
And let's be freaking real for a second. Military sexual assault, military sexual harassment, military sexual trauma, right, which includes both of those. Look, I served, you served. I believe that the problem of military sexual assault and harassment is 10 times worse than anybody's reporting. 10 times. Because most of these situations are never reported. They're not. And I know the military's come a long way. They've got their restricted reporting and unrestricted reporting. They've got counselors and all of that, but that doesn't stop the fact that a lot of times these assaults and harassments happen from somebody in your chain of command. And it might even be your direct supervisor who is assaulting or harassing you. Well, when you have that kind of a situation, I don't care who you are, the chances of you reporting that are not good out of fear of reprisal. And so, we've got a problem in the U.S. military, and we've got to own that problem. We've got to solve that problem, and I think we got a long way to go. Okay.
What I would chime to that also, Brian, is the same thing we've always said, especially for folks. I just want to hammer it again. It comes down to your condition. Your symptoms are your symptoms are your symptoms. It does not matter if you were a cook, admin, combat infantry, a ranger, a SEAL. Your trauma is your trauma. And one thing I will share is, and Brian's had similar calls, but working with Vietnam veterans specifically, and a few Korean War veterans, one thing that I've heard over and over again is that people ask, well, why VACI, right? Why VA Claims Insider? And I can tell you that for many of the veterans we've worked with, the first time they've ever spoken about their condition really was with one of our coaches, was with me. I've spoken to Vietnam veterans who said, DP, I literally came back from Vietnam, went to the BFW, American Legion, great organizations, but what happened when they got there was a lot of peacocking and chest thumping, right? You think you had it bad in Vietnam, let me tell you about Korea. Fast forward, the guy from Iraq comes back, or the Gulf War veteran comes back, and the Vietnam guy goes, you think you had it bad? Let me tell you about my situation, right? So it almost becomes a situation where the rivalry we have in the military, which is, go Army, beat Navy, right? Air Force this, Marine Corps that. Those things are great for the aspect of war fighting. But when it comes to taking off the uniform, my thesis is that we take off the camouflage, but we keep it psychologically, and we blend into the world. And we don't want to speak about things, right? So when I go to the BFW or go to a military organization, I don't want to sit there and say about my trauma because you know what? Somebody had it worse, right? Come on, Brian. I was a cook. I was an admin. I was a medical person, right? You were infantry or you were a ranger. Those guys had it worse, and they don't talk. So when we have what we've done here basically is created an environment where it doesn't matter what your job was. It's the reason I'm asking what I'm asking, right? What branch of service were you in and your years? I don't care about your rank or your job, right? It's irrelevant. The point is you're served. And if you experience trauma, that trauma then is valid, right? My trauma to Brian's trauma, it's trauma. It doesn't matter. Our symptoms are our symptoms. I would share on my end, being in the military, I was one of the first responders at 9/11. New York City, World Trade Center, we were one of the first ones there. So that's one of the first instances where I dealt with, holy cow, this is happening in my backyard. So here I go from being a National Guard reservist person, right, is just going to, get some money for college, not do anything. And the reserve all of a sudden turned into active duty overnight. And from September 11th forward, it was just, a nonstop evolution of just life taking a different turn. So I was there from September 11 all the way to March 2002 in the rubble, seeing all the stuff that was going on there in different capacities, seeing that. Fast forward, then Iraq, deployments come, things happen in Iraq, you get mortared, you deal with all the things that, people deal with at times. And then what did I do like most military folks, right? Transition back into the reserve. I go into law enforcement because it's a natural progression, right? I go from one extreme to the next. So now I'm in law enforcement, dealing in, counterterrorism, working on the federal side. Everything's supposed to be great, yet I'm dealing with these issues, right? So like Brian has shared, all of a sudden, right, for those that know PTSD, if you know me in the real world, you'll know that you never saw anything personal anywhere, right? If I had an office or a cubicle, you saw maybe like a picture of something military, but you never saw the pictures of my kids. You never saw a picture of my wife. You never saw anything because as a veteran dealing with PTSD, what I now understand is that the reason my cubicle was empty is because I was camouflaging myself. When you met DP, he was hardworking, got the job done, did stuff, but don't invite him to the cookout or having conversations because I just want to go to work, right? I work by the numbers, I get things done, but I don't want to share, nor be vulnerable, nor open up. So there's no pictures of my kids. There's no picture of what my daughter drew me or my son drew me because I'm not giving anybody the opportunity to attack me. So emotionally, I'm guarded. So people know that, hey, he's a great worker. But guess what happens in the government, as Brian knows, being a government employee, the way you move up is connections, right? You have to talk, right? It's the water cooler conversation, sometimes brown nosing or, schmoozing. And that's not a thing that someone PTSD can do because I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk about my weekend. I don't want to talk about my life. I don't want to talk about my kids. I just want to tell you the weekend was not long enough. Back to work, right? Every Monday, if you ask me, hey, DP, how was it? Not long enough. And back to work. So I share that to say that, transitioning into law enforcement and then coming to a point where I said, I have to just stop living this lie of trying to do something I can't do, right? Because I cannot excel in a place that is not made for me, right? I can mask things to a degree, but at the end of the day, who was I really fooling, right? And the day that I decided to say, after I got, came to the point of getting my rating, I said, you know what, it's time, right? And I, called up medical and said, hey, look, I have PTSD and I've been dealing with this for a while. I'm in therapy and all that, but I had to let the job know. Right. And, they took my creds and took my gun. And that's just part of the process because they wanted to make sure I was safe. Right. So I went through the process of being evaluated, presented my documents. They found I was fit and I had no issues with that. But nonetheless, I knew for a fact that from that point, all the other things I had, right, wouldn't be enough. So medically, other things I dealt with precluded me from traveling and doing things in my job. So all that to say that I had to come to a point where when I made a point to make that call, I broke down because I knew that that was it. There was no going back. Regardless of what the agency said, I was not going to go back, right? So I was done. And that began the journey of me finding out now what do I do going forward. And for me, this company helped me do that. It helped me give me the ability where someone might say, well, Brian, why do I need this rating? No, it gave me the ability to know that it isn't me. I now understand what I deal with. One example that I would share with everyone is if Brian got hit by a vehicle and had a limp, you wouldn't call Brian a limp. You would say he has a limp because he got hit by a vehicle. What happens with us with mental health is we deal with trauma, we lock it away, and then we just identify that you're just an angry person, you're someone that has these issues, and we internalize our conditions. When in reality is, Brian was hit by a vehicle, but psychologically. And that caused PTSD. And today he deals with that, as do I. So for us, coming out here and sharing our story, it's basically trying to say, hey, we're like you. I'm not going to speak for you, but this is my truth. This is Brian's truth. And I would be pretty confident that many people can relate to this. But all that to say that as a veteran dealing with PTSD, I had to choose life over appearance, over a job, over a badge, over a thing. Right, and that was an adjustment disorder period for me. But then coming here and being able to serve and do things was powerful. So being at PTSD Awareness Month, the focus of all this is it doesn't matter if you were in Kandahar, Iraq, if it was military sexual trauma, if you were assaulted in the barracks, no matter what happened, when it happened, you matter, you have a voice, and your stressors and your symptoms are valid. And we have to focus on that because that's the only way that those Vietnam veterans we work with have been able to get rated. But beyond the rating, it's not to get their old life back, but to begin a new life. I think, Brian, would you agree that at our darkest moments, we have felt that our best days are behind us? And what's the worth of going forward, right? We've both had suicidal ideation. We've dealt with times where it's like, this should be the end because the best days are behind me, right? There's nothing in front of me. And fast forward, with this reality of understanding therapy, getting help, etc., I don't want to go back to the good old days. I am now trying to create new days. Today is a new day, right? Today we're announcing the shift of VACI to the next level, and that's really what this is about because we matter. You matter. On your side, what would you say to that piece? But that's what I would say as far as my PTSD, to not unpack too much of it, but I understand. I've been there, especially as a law enforcement cat that has all those other layers on top of that. I get it. But you matter beyond the job itself because the job's going to end, right? Even if you stay in it, 20 years are going to go by. So what's next? What would you say to that?
It doesn't matter. Thank you, DP, for sharing all that and for being vulnerable with our community. Some of that I didn't even know about you and about your story. So it's good for me to be able to learn as well. Look, you've heard me say this before, and I'm going to say it forever. We celebrate life change here. And what we actually do is we give veterans hope inside of our community. That's why we're here, is to celebrate life change with you and to bring you hope and to help you get better. Okay? And it might sound counterintuitive because I fought it too. right? I don't deserve this. I wasn't out there kicking indoors. I'm not a, Ranger. I'm not a Navy SEAL. I was just a contracting guy. We do everything we can to convince ourselves that we don't have it, we don't deserve it, I don't want a label, and we mask our identity, our reality, with our vices, right? We do. And DP just described what one of his was. It was to hide, to not share. I can tell you what my vices were: alcohol, drugs, gambling. Sometimes all of them at the same time, all right? And what happened in my life as I literally began this downward spiral, which peaked for me in 2017, it was bad, really bad. I mean, when it comes to alcohol, I was a professional drinker, all right? I mean, I could drink half a bottle of Jack Daniels and get behind the wheel of a vehicle, right? And I did, stupidly. Thank God, right, that I didn't kill somebody else, or to include myself, from just very, very bad behavior. And then the drugs, right? For me, it was the benzos. It's a category, so like Klonopin, right? They're a form of opioids, but they're benzos. And benzos are typically fast-acting anxiety medications, and they're terrible for long-term treatment. They're not. In fact, benzos are supposed to be for a very short period of time to help you recenter, especially if you're in the midst of a panic attack or something like that. But the issue for me was the more I drank, the more pills I took, right? And then the more pills I took, the more I drank. They feed off each other. And so, I mean, when we've talked before about some of the grossly inappropriate behavior, right? Drunk driving, running people off the side of the road, screaming, shouting, throwing things, breaking windows, doors, passing out in bathrooms. I mean, some of the things that veterans do, right? And mind you, these are things that are celebrated in the military culture. So that's another issue entirely. Is, I don't know about you, but when I wore the uniform, the more you could drink, the cooler you were.
Well, it's a badge of honor, basically. Like, look what I can do. I want to take a quick second and just highlight a few folks that have been commenting here. Michael Blevins, 92 to 97, U.S. Air Force. We appreciate your service, brother. Jerry, 87 to 02, Navy. Thank you for your service. Gary, U.S. Army, 15 years. Thank you for your service. Kim, Coast Guard, 85-88. Thank you for your service. We appreciate you being here. David Chambers, U.S. Navy, 87 to 91. Thank you for your service, brother. Mark, USMC from Aloha. Thank you for your service. Ricky says, hello, Brian. Army, 10 years here. Clark, U.S. Air Force, Vietnam era. E5, U.S. Air Force, Vietnam era, old fart here, says Clark. So, thank you, Clark, for your service. We're glad that you're here, brother. Tony, 8290, U.S. Air Force. Don, USS Enterprise, 65 to 68. Don, thank you for your service.
Wow.
Geez, we appreciate you being here. We need people like you here, brother, because there's a story that you have and wisdom that you possess that we need and younger folks need. Paul, thank you for your service. Navy, 74 to 99. That's a few days in there, so thank you for your service there for sure, brother. Kevin, morning, Army, 98 to 07. There's a bunch of folks here. Just want to every so often just kind of stop and just recognize you all. Deborah, thank you for your service, and I'm just kind of putting a few there. 76 to 80. Thank you so much for being with us here. Brian, there's a lot of folks saying a lot of things to the effect of, they can relate to that. They know what that feels like, being a government employee, the security clearance, right? All those type of things that we've been talking about just now. People can relate to that, but it's the truth that we all deal with.
Yeah, man. So look, thanks DP for that pause and for highlighting the vets on this call. And when we say thank you for your service, we really mean thank you for your service, because we know what it's like to serve, right? We do. We serve too. So thank you. Thank you for all you did, regardless of whether you were on a ship, you were in combat, you were home station, whatever you did, your position mattered. You stood up and said, I'm going to serve. Okay. And that matters, and that's important. That says something about you. Before I want to jump into the security clearance, but before we do that, DP,
Yes.
I want to talk about the crisis line.
Yes.
There's a 24/7, 365 confidential veterans crisis line. We talk about suicide because it's real. It's a significantly serious epidemic problem inside of military culture and in the veteran community. Suicide, it's a horrible, horrible thing. But I know that you can get there. You can get in that super dark, awful place where you don't think that there's another option for you. And it's real. It happens. Okay? So please hear me when I tell you this. You're important. Your life matters. God put you here for a reason, to fulfill some type of a purpose, right? Whether you know what that is or not, you're here for a reason, and your life matters. In our community and on this call, there's no shame, okay? Your life matters. We need you. All right, I want to pivot, though, and I want to talk about...
And I put that number up as well there. So again, the 800 273 8255, or texting 838 255, the crisis hotline that is available as well. We'll share that, but we definitely want to pause and just recognize that it's okay to not be okay. If you need to reach out and get help, do so, right? Don't hold back. Don't think that you don't need to, hold it in, or whatever the case may be. The fact of the matter is, you matter, we are here, and we're sharing our truth, not to say, hey, look at this, look at that, but rather to say, hey, we can do this, you can do this. And the thing that we wish we had is what we're trying to now give others, right? When you were in the bottom of that well, Brian, thankfully you heard that voice, right? Like you said, you felt that calling on your life that God had to be able to serve and do something greater than yourself, and you listened. Sadly, others may not be able to hear a voice like that, so maybe a hand reaching out in the darkness to pull them back is what we're trying to do here. We celebrate life by doing that. We honor your service and are saying that we are disabled veterans like you all, right? We're not perfect. We mess up. We have days when it's like, I don't even know if I can do this anymore, but that mission, that drive pushes us. And that's part of the reason why we are pivoting, right, into what we're doing to the next evolution. If you've been with us for a while, you've seen that we keep growing and doing new things, and we're going to share some fun stuff that's coming down the road here, but I'm going to shoot it back to Brian to touch on the security clearance piece. I know that was one question that came up.
Yeah, two of the scariest moments for me, the first time I admitted I had a problem on deployment and made that walk into the mental health clinic to go get help. That was one of the scariest moments of my life.
How hard was that for you?
to actually sit there and like, because one thing is like, okay, I can admit I have an issue, but to get up and walk into an office and actually say, help.
Oh man, it was awful. But I literally knew I had no other option, right? It was either going to be suicide or help, right? I mean, that's literally about what it was amounting to, because I wasn't sleeping. And so here I am on deployment, just basically a zombie, right? And so I was going to get sent home. Certainly had those horrible thoughts. And my battle buddy encouraged me to make that walk. And thank God I did. Thank God I did. Okay, so maybe that is an encouragement. Maybe it's a kick in the butt. Maybe it's a reality check for you. Pick up the phone. Call VA Mental Health. If you're in a crisis situation, you can call or text the crisis line or chat, or you can go to an emergency room right now, right? If you maybe need inpatient care. There's no shame in that, okay? So that was the scariest moment, I think. The second scariest moment was I had a top secret security clearance while I wore the uniform, and even when I took the uniform off, right? It transfers with you. I had a TSSCI security clearance, and I was working top secret programs. And I returned from deployment with this myriad of mental and physical conditions, multiple mental health issues going on. I'm taking medications. Some of them were working better than others, which we're going to talk about medications here in a little bit. But the second scariest moment was having to go meet with the security officer, right, for the programs that I was working on, and to have to pull out my SF-86, my security clearance paperwork, and to have to admit and to actually write down on paper that I'm suffering from mental health conditions and that I'm taking medications. I was so scared that once I reported it, that I was going to lose my security clearance, right? That my TS would be revoked. I was worried that, maybe my secret clearance would be revoked. Maybe I'd get kicked out. My chain of command would find out. I'd no longer be up for promotions, awards, decorations. It's the lies we tell ourselves. It's amazing, right? It really is amazing some of the crap we can fill our brains with. And I was absolutely shocked to find out that the Bostonian, he was born and raised Bostonian, so he had the thick Boston accent. Brian, how you doing? Right? I mean, that's how the guy spoke. But our security officer for the programs, right, for the skiff that we worked in, he was a Marine. So I'm in there like shaking as I'm having to tell him, hey, there's something I need to tell you. I need to probably update my security clearance paperwork, but I don't know how this works. He's like, sure, what you got? Just tell me what's going on, what's on your mind. After I told him, he opened up to me and said, Brian, I have PTSD. And I have a disability rating for PTSD. There's no shame in it. He was the security official over the program. Okay? So the sense of relief that came from that conversation, I can't even explain to you the comfort that he inspired in me. His name was David. And again, my point here, though, is nothing happened. I didn't lose my clearance. I was taking medications in therapy with a top secret security clearance. Okay? Now, can I guarantee that something, won't happen? No, I can't. Right? I don't know whatever program you might be working on. I don't know the level of your clearance. There's different levels. There's different things that can affect your clearance. But I'm just telling you here right now that I had multiple mental health diagnoses. I'm taking medications. Yes, I had to tell my security official. Yes, I had to update my SF-86. Nothing happened to my security clearance. Okay.
And I think to that point, it's also it's the misconception. I don't think people realize that there's a variety of different things that we're looking at. If you're fit to do a job, you're fit to do a job. But sadly, for some individuals at times, they may not. And that's just coming to grips with the fact that, that is changing, right? That you have to embrace probably a new way of coming into a new field or what have you. So it's not an automatic thing that gets pulled from you. Rather, they want to check to make sure that you're able to still do a thing, right? Can you still,
Right.
hold integrity, do your job or what have you? So it doesn't necessarily affect that per se. It just depends on what you're dealing with and what you're doing. So I would say above all things, right, being honest. Because the other flip side is if you're dealing with something and you truly have problems or what have you, that's going to come on the wash anyway, right? So getting ahead of something, let them know, hey, look, I deal with these things. This is noted, right? That from a security clearance perspective, it helps you because you are being honest. You're not withholding information, right? The biggest thing for a clearance is integrity, right? If your integrity or fitness, comes across as being something that might be, questioned, right? That's really the thing that they'll be looking at there. But I think it's just good to know that really self-care is the very first thing that has to be noted for sure.
Oh man. So, look, there's always been this interesting dilemma, dichotomy, catch-22. When you wear the uniform and even when you take it off, you still carry this mission first mentality with you, right? And I've had some fantastic commanders. I've had some terrible commanders. I've worked for some incredible leaders. I've had some toxic leaders, as most of us probably have. But the one thing that I always was interested in hearing from them is mission or people, right? People, mission. Mission, people. And the best commanders I ever had were the ones who actually didn't necessarily see those two as an or, mission or people, right? What's more important, the mission or the people? What's more important, the people or the mission? What was interesting, though, is one of the best commanders I ever had told me, I need you to be well first. I need you to take care of you first and foremost, right? And again, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? That doesn't sound like service before self. That sounds like self before service. But it's not. And here's why it's not. Because if you can't take care of you, how can you take care of anybody else? If you can't take care of you, how can you be the father, the husband, the employee, the contractor, the leader, the spiritual advisor, the coach, the mentor? Wherever you are, right? Nope, getting a little bit of feedback there, but my point though is you have to take care of you first, and that isn't selfish, right? That isn't selfish because you're no good to the mission, you're no good to your employer or your family unless you're getting help and you're okay. And it's something that military members and veterans especially, they forget that. They forget about the self-care. So I'm glad you brought that up, DP.
One thing that I want to bring up, someone mentioned here, Gary, and this is I think it's a powerful statement. Gary shared that he was ordered to keep quiet, mission classified, 35 years of his life burned in a white hot hole in his heart and soul, and he feels others may feel the same way, right? Under the whole, just don't speak a thing, keep it classified, right? Whatever it is that you're doing, but that pressure, that like he said, I think is very powerful. It burned a white hot hole in his heart and his soul, not being able to, let those things out. I'm a big believer that it's energy, right? When you're dealing with PTSD, that energy gets stuck in that fight or flight, and that switch doesn't turn off, right? So you're always kind of hyper vigilant per se, And that energy, if it's not, funneled elsewhere or sent, in another direction by getting help or whatever the case may be, that's one of those things that I think therapy is huge, because you need the ability to be able to let that energy out. Holding that information in for many of us, right? To follow up on the second thing you said, how did it feel for you when you finally got to the point of like, it's scary, I'm going to talk about this. The guy said he hears it, but when you were finally able to let that out, what did that do for you? Because I think that's a key point for individuals, because people are saying, well, my claim, my claim, my claim. If you can't tell your story, you're not going to be truly looked at correctly. So the first part here is admitting we have an issue, knowing how to tell the story. That's where we kind of come in to help out and be able to say, look, understand your truth, right? It's your story to tell, but what we are able to do here is create an environment for you to get those things out, seek the services. But for you personally, what was that like to be able to finally just say, this is what I'm dealing with?
It was complete relief. Because the longer you hold this stuff, the worse it gets, the harder it gets, and then the more we turn to our vices to try to cope with it. And so you can begin that downward spiral pretty quickly. And if there's anything I learned about this and walking this journey with all of y'all, is the longer it goes, the harder it gets. And so, sometimes you just got to take that baby step. Maybe it's a confidential chat, right? And then maybe you're willing to say, you know what? I'm not going to have a beer today. I'm not going to have, a mixer tonight. I'm not going to have wine. I'm going to take one day off. And then maybe you can make it to 2 days, right? And then maybe 2 days becomes 3 days, and 3 days becomes 6 days. And all of a sudden, you start to build this momentum. As an entrepreneur, as a CEO, a company owner, we're in the momentum business. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Your life, your energy depends upon momentum. And that's some of what we're talking about here is in order to build momentum, you got to start somewhere.
I think right? you appreciate this one, Brian. It's like flying a plane. Put your oxygen mask on first. And I think that's honestly true. I have a follow-up question for you. We're not doing Q&A, but I think it's pertinent to the conversation. For those that know me, know that I have a service dog in training, and I'm going through that process. And I share that because for you, Brian, what was it that you held on to be able to step forward and speak, right? Because there's somebody out there right now who potentially might say, what's the worth? And I mentioned the service dog piece because for some individuals, you know what? It might be your kid that's the motivator to get help. It might be your dog who's the motivator to get help. It might be, your girlfriend, your wife, your parent, your cousin, whatever it might be, even if it's showing up to these lives that we do just to do something when you're confined. Hold on to that, whatever that spark is that can get you up. Like you've heard Brian Reese say it, so I'm not gonna imitate him. But if you're hearing our voice, get your butt to the doctor, get your butt to the psych, go talk to someone, go to the vet center, go to the VA, reach out, do whatever you have to. In our group, we have psychologists, right? In our mastermind, reach out to someone, get in contact with them. But but my question to you, Brian, is what was it that you held on? That when you were in that darkest period, right? So you had the cathartic moment of kind of speaking, but to rewind, getting just to the point of saying that, what did you latch on to, right? Was it your faith? Was it someone that you said, even if I won't do it for myself, right? Because that's the other issue. Many of us don't feel like we matter, right? So it's like, I don't care, please. I could drive this car off the highway and I'm better off that way anyway, right? But that one thing that kept me there and not veering off the highway, right? That thing that kept me on the, that 4 a.m. ride that you've probably been on too, right? That 3:30, 4 a.m. ride where no one is on the road and that bend's coming up and it's just like, man, if I took this bend just a little faster, right? Whoopsie.
You could just jerk the wheel.
Right.
Been there.
Right. So for you, what kept that steering wheel in your life straight, right? What made you slow down and not take that little jerk, right, and just say screw it all?
Two things: faith and family. Family, it was more so my son. I've got a 7-year-old son now named Dylan, and I couldn't imagine him going through life without a father, without a dad. And so, for him, right? But prior to that, it was faith in family and just knowing that I couldn't continue, right? And it's kind of funny, DP, because that sort of brings us to what we've talked about today, about the pain of change, right? When will you change? Brian Reese and David Pineda can't make anybody change, right? Can't. I could coach you, I could mentor you, I could read a book with you, I could pray with you, right? But true change has to come from within. And we might be able to help unleash that. That's what coaching is, right? To unleash you, to get you to a place that you couldn't get to on your own.
Yes.
But when we talk about change, when does change happen? Right? Change happens when the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of change. I'm going to say that again. Change happens when the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of change. Then you will change. Until you hit that point, you won't.
So I have to jump. I have to jump in and tell you, Brian. So Brian told me that exact same word, that line, when I doubted myself in running a team or even doing what we're doing here, right? Where it's like, I don't know if I can really bring value here, right? There's someone better. There's someone that has a better story. I don't know if this is, a thing that I can pull off. But I'm stuck, right? Like, I don't want to remain the same. I don't want to keep doing the same old job. And my thing to Brian is like, the questions me and Brian have had offline is being both government employees, having left government service. My thing, one of the first questions I ever asked him was, how did you do it? Right? Because remember, we're coming from the government, military, right? Paid on the 1st and 15th, routine, and moving into this entrepreneurial world, it's a whole different beast. And my question to Brian was, how did you do that, right? How did you make that shift? Because I know I need to make a shift, but how do I get that? And that's exactly what he said, right? When the pain of remaining the same outweighs the pain of change, then you will change, right? And I had to sit there and really think about it. And I said, who am I fooling here, right? At the end of the day, it's easy to stay in a construct, right, Brian? Of, I'm in the system, the government, I'm never going to move up because of my issues, but I can blame everyone, right? But taking a chance on yourself, taking the time to do something, right, self-care, etc., that's no one else but you now, right? I can't blame someone else for not stepping up and getting help. So that applies to so many areas, both from an employment standpoint, a mental health standpoint, of coming to the point of saying, I'm done with this. I have to get help. I'm done with just staying in the same bucket here. I think it's powerful. Gary put a comment up here and said, I want to hurt everyone who made me cry. Veterans made me cry and hugged me with tears in their eyes, and I'm thankful for them. And really coming to the point where this is, for many, a release. We have veterans, Brian knows firsthand, how many veterans have you talked to that literally have been holding something for 30, 40, 50 years and finally have opened up about what they've dealt with, which now releases that tension. Right, many of you right now, I'll quickly say it, especially because it's PTSD Awareness Month, you did not come back from your service, right? One of the things that we have started to do is welcoming you home. Every time someone comes into VA Claims Insider Mastermind, we say, welcome home. And we're saying that because sadly, many of us never came back. Brian Reese didn't come back from Afghanistan. What came back was a version of Brian Reese, right? DP didn't come back from Ground Zero, didn't come back from Iraq. We came back as different individuals. And for many of you all, you did not come back from Vietnam. So we're not thanking you for your service as much as we're welcoming you into the community, but we're honoring your service because many times we don't acknowledge that. But understanding that having this conversation, opening up, getting the help you need, truly will let you now begin to move into a new place, right? Think about that veteran from Vietnam who their kids don't know who they are, right? Bob was a dancer. Bob was the life of the party, and now no one knows who that is because it's been 30 years of PTSD and never knew what that was. And now with the tools of therapy and help and compensation and services, you can begin to reclaim some of that to where now your kids and your grandkids can truly meet you again for the first time. And that is, to me, that is one of the things that floored me when a 60, 70-year-old man can say that my kids don't know who I am, right? The wife knows who they were before they went to Vietnam or, whatever combat operation or whatever they experienced. But now, being in the moment again and reintroducing yourself, that's what this all does. It's more than compensation, folks. It's more than a rating, folks. It's your life, right? Like, think about it, Brian. When did your family again say, oh, Brian's back? Right? If you think about it, right? Because you didn't come back, right? It took time to get that help.
Well, they still haven't, and that's okay. And that's another thing that I think we need to address is that you're going to go through moments in your life where you're going to change, right? That's okay. That's part of life. Mm-hmm. You're going to change. There's going to be ebbs and flows. You're going to have great days. You're going to have good days. You're going to have normal days. You're going to have average days. You're going to have very below average days. You're going to have shit days, right? You're going to be in the bottom of a gutter days, mm-hmm. right? It's going to happen, and it might still continue to happen. And so, for me, very few people remember who I used to be, right? Very few, even fewer, right, remember who I used to be. More knew me when I came back. They knew I was a lot of fun. I was the life of the party. Man, you wanted to go drinking, you call me because we're going, right? And we're going to tear shit up. I mean, and we did, right? But I was lying to myself. I was living this version of me that was just a monster, mm-hmm. an absolute self-destructive monster. And I'm proud to say I've been sober now for over 2 years. Thank God, and I'll never go back.
Awesome.
And I've been off the benzos, the Klonopin. I've been off of that for well over a year. I think it's actually been closer to 2 years. Have I found the perfect cocktail yet, so to speak, of medications? No. In fact, I just started a new mood drug because of the changes and the variability of my mood that you don't see, mm-hmm. right? And so I think, DP, and this is kind of a good point to address this, is sometimes people will look at DP or me or other folks on our team and kind of go, well, they got it all together, right? They got life figured out, their family's okay, they're in a good position, they're mentally stable. No, we ain't.
No.
and we don't have it figured out, and we're all on this journey together. And that's what makes our movement so special, is you can be you.
It's okay to not be okay. It's okay.
You don't have to fake it anymore. Mm-hmm. You don't have to fake it anymore. One of the sayings I've come to absolutely hate is fake it till you make it.
Yep.
I hate it. And the reason why I hate that statement is because we live in a world full of fakers. Mm-hmm. Go look at the socials. We live in a world where everybody's faking that they're fine. Yep. They're faking that they're normal. They're faking that their marriage is okay.
Successful.
They're faking that their kids love them. They're faking that their job's good. Right? We're all faking it. And what I'm telling you is, when you come into our community, you can be you. Mm-hmm. And we're going to encourage you to be the real you, because that's the only way you move forward.
Yes.
If you continue to fake it, you will continue to mask it with your vices, which continue to lead to self-destruction.
Yep.
Right?
And that's what I would say, Brian, that I appreciate is it's also accountability to each other, right? Because the reality is, all you're doing at times is just masking one thing for the next, right? And we all have that person or that group that can call us out on it, saying, all right, so you stopped doing this, but it looks like you're doing that now. Like, you're not faking anything here. I would say that it's what people don't see is what happens when the camera goes off, right? You won't see how I will beat myself up because the audio didn't work how I wanted it to work. You won't see how I'll sit here and scrutinize everything that happened during this live, right? You won't see the mental toll of it should have been better, right? It should have been this or it should have been that, and how that whole thing can spiral, or what Brian will go through when he walks away from this and, second guess himself or what have you. Like, those things we don't see. We don't share that, obviously, because that's, you don't see that. You just see this one, hour segment here. But the rest of the 23 hours of the day, you don't see us up to 2, 3, 4 in the morning, bouts of not being able to sleep or dealing with things. But we're sharing this because it's not about look at me, but it's saying this is how we break the stigma. This is how we get through the fact of saying, despite the fact that we have this, I at least have the ability to reach out to Brian and say, hey, I need a day, or I'm not going to be able to do a thing, or I have to step away for a side. Like, that's how we build effective, healthy communities. And like in my team, for example, again, with Team Champions, we do a live. I tell them, hey, take the rest of the day off. You're done. Because for the rest of this day, I am done. I don't have the mental capacity to do things. And I would encourage anyone that is listening to this, let your therapist know what you're doing. My therapist knows what I do here. And his advice to me is, when you're done doing one of these lives and you're sharing and you're opening up, take the rest of the day off. You're done. You do not have the mental strength to give and do other things. And that was hard for me to do that. But it's part of that healing process of being real, because I'm not going to fake it. I need an hour.
Yeah, man. DP, you're spot on. What you don't see is when I close this laptop, I'm completely zapped. I'll probably go take a nap. Because I've got nothing left. If a headache comes on, right? If you're dealing with anxiety or panic, or you feel yourself getting into that elevated place where you can't breathe, you have to stop. And so, believe me, when this laptop lid closes, I ain't going back to work. I'm going to sleep. Right? That's not normal. Okay? That's not normal, but it's okay. Okay?
Brian, I gotta.
Screw normal, man.
Yeah.
Screw normal.
And I gotta tell you, so Cassandra Thomas, that's been my story. Rich Martin says, smiling on the outside, dead on the inside, to the point of faking it till you're making it. People are agreeing. Robert says, yes, that's me. I can relate to that. I constantly watch VACI videos and open because my mental health therapy. I use it as mental health therapy as well. Without this, I would have been, screwed up. VACI has helped save my life. Tony, thank you for sharing that. And again, we make a big one that we didn't do in the beginning here is, we are not medical providers, right? This does not constitute in any shape, fashion, or form medical advice or legal advice. This is veterans talking to veterans. We are sharing our stories, because now what we're saying is, go get that professional medical help. Go speak to that therapist, right? To the pivot, as what we are doing here in our company by networking and bringing resources that veterans need. For many of them, this is the first time they'll have the ability to talk to a psychologist. I'll be honest with you, Brian, the first time I ever talked to a psych, I think, was when I actually said I need a psych eval. I need to reach out and actually get connected with someone to figure out my claim process, right? So kind of, hunkering it to the VACI side of the house, because I want to ask you about the pivot that we're doing, so you can share a little bit of that again as we start to wrap up here. I think it's just powerful to be able to, use all of this, right? But this is us basically reaching out, right? Someone reached out to me. I want to reach out to the next person. But if you're hearing our voice, this is just our story that may sound a lot like yours, but we're here today because we took the next step, which is getting help, which is speaking about this. In my case, having a service dog, I had to have a conversation with my kids. You know how hard that was to talk to them about, this is not a family dog, this is a service dog for dad's issues and his PTSD, and your daughter's like, do I have PTSD? You know what I mean? So it's literally the conversation to break that stigma of, okay, now I understand what this is, and that's why we share the story and open up, our wounds and our closets of pain and issues that nobody wants to talk about, because it's the only way to work through these things. Can you talk a little bit about that, Brian, on your side?
The only way, in my opinion, again, DP highlighted, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, this is not medical advice, this is not legal advice, these are fellow vets talking to you, being raw, real, open, vulnerable, to bring you the conversations that you need. There is one way to get through this, and that's to be open, honest, vulnerable, and to take that first half step forward.
Yes.
To stop faking it. to admit that you're not okay, to look yourself in the mirror and have that first honest conversation to say, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. I've been a terrible father. I've been a terrible husband, wife. I haven't taken care of me. Right? And until you make that choice, again, I can't do it for you. I wish I could, but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I can't make you change.
Yeah.
I can offer advice. I can give you tools. I can give you resources. I can give you a hug. I can kick you in the ass. Sometimes you need that too.
Yep.
Right? I can't make you do it. What I will tell you is these two people on this call and many of our community, some of them on live, teammates, we have done it. We're living proof that you can do it. Does that mean we have it all figured out? Hell no. Hell no.
Nope.
Right? Does that mean we're better? No. It's a journey. Okay? It's a journey. Stop faking that you're okay. Get real with yourself. Look in the mirror. Sometime today, tomorrow, next week, whenever it is you're ready, look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you being the father, the husband, the business owner, the leader, the spiritual advisor, the whoever, whatever you are?
And this
is the person you were put on earth to be. And if the answer is no, and the answer to that question is no for too many days in a row, hopefully you hit that tipping point, right? Where the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of change, then you'll change.
Yes. And I think, and that's what this community is about. That's what today's all been about. It's one, sharing our story and really focusing on the community. Brian, can you segue a little bit there into some of the changes that people might start seeing? I know some folks are asking about kind of what's on the road ahead. So I want to go ahead and kind of give you a chance to do that before you get your thoughts together. Tony said, Brian, when I finally opened up, I was vulnerable during my CMP. I was spent for 3 days. I was drained but relieved. I am so thankful. Words cannot express. Thank you, Tony, for sharing that. But that's, an example there. Over to you, Brian, as far as kind of like what's coming up. What's the future looking like here for those out there in the interwebs?
Sure. Yeah, the future is incredible. Couldn't be more blessed to be able to serve with you, our team. Look, this is not about me anymore. Will I continue to lead? Yes. Will I continue to set strategy? Yes. Okay. What you're going to see, though, is a little bit of a shift in moving toward highlighting our community, highlighting our teammates, highlighting our brand. Okay. And shifting from solopreneur, this is about Brian, to this is about the movement. This is about the team. Okay, and so you're going to see some of the social channels are going to shift from Brian Reese to VA Claims Insider. You're going to see Facebook shift to, just seeing my face to seeing a lot more of our team. I can't do this without our team, right? There was a time where I could do this by myself. That was 4 years ago. Okay, we're not there anymore. And if there's one thing I've learned along the way, being on some incredible teams, being on some horrible teams, being on some average teams, is it's all about the team, right? I say this to our team all the time, and I'll say it to you. If you want to go fast, go alone, okay? If you want to go far, go together. I'll say that again. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's really the shift that we're making here is we've de-emphasized extreme speed. Now, don't get me wrong, we still move very fast. But we've de-emphasized extreme speed, and we continue to push and overemphasize the team, testing, iterating, community, making sure that everything we're doing is about service to you. Okay. And so a lot of that has to do with our brand and some of the branding shifts you're going to see and how we're showcasing the teammates like DP and the champions who serve you day to day as your coaches. Okay.
And I think that really speaks to what you all have said, right? We hear the comments, we hear the criticism, both the good and the bad, and this is how we grow. This is how we get better, right? The reality is that one person can't do it all alone, and really, resetting and factoring in the things that you've seen. I can tell you that what's coming for VA Claims Insider, VA Claims Insider Elite, and different programs that we're rolling out, it's amazing. There's going to be a new focus on that elite service. We're going to keep hitting on that elite service because I'll tell you what, you're not going to get better unless you get feedback. And I can tell you that, right now we're having this conversation, but make no mistake about it. All the comments, all the complaints that may come, because again, we're growing, right? It's a learning curve where the demand is there. I can tell you, Brian takes every single one of those things to heart personally, and we're actively working on that, and we're working on solutions and new offerings that are going to make the next person's experience better, right? And that's really all that we can ask for, right? Is to make the fact that maybe, we didn't serve or did do what we should have done for you to the best of our abilities, or maybe we missed an area. Now that we know, hey, you know what, we could have added this piece in there. Brian is open to that, right? Like, hey, Brian, I think we should add this. This will make the experience better. Let's do it. Right? And that's really what this is about. The focus of the shift to the community, the shift to the team effort is to give that experience to make things better. So this is all fueled by your feedback. We want the feedback.
Yeah. And look, we're not perfect. And like any startup, we've gone through multiple pivots and shifts, right? I mean, when we first launched, all we had was mastermind calls on a Friday, right? And then we came back and said, what else do you want and need? Like, what do you need? Well, we need more help. We want more support, right? So we started rolling out new programs to help you. And that's what we're doing. That's what we continue to do as we grow, evolve, and pivot. Are we perfect? Heck no. We screw up every single day. I screw up every single day. Okay? It's okay. It's called life, right? We're humans. We're fundamentally flawed as human beings.
But we own it, and we're getting better, and we're starting that, and that's what this is today. Brian, as I said, I'll say like a little 5-minute warning here, but Tammy says, "Thank you, Brian and David. I was done with filing claims that continue to be denied until I found VA Claims Insider. I'm awaiting a response from the BVA now, and I'm definitely feeling positive about my outcome. If you haven't already, please sign up with VA Claims Insider." Rashida, thank you out there. So again, just testimonials of folks that are able to speak on things. Jesus, thank you for sharing your story. She said, "Thank you. I'm thankful to Brian and all the brothers and sisters here who are helping me realize that I'm not alone and my issues are real and not in my head." That alone is a life change that gives the power to someone to be able to go out there and do what they need to do. So I just really wanted to just focus that real quick. Stephen Vinoy, one of our all-star coaches, movement is about education and teaching veterans to be winners. Wholeheartedly, Stephen, you are spot on to that. So like I said, I just, shameless plug. Do you mind if I let them know how to reach me there, Brian?
Oh, brother, that's what this is about. I mean, get in touch with the champions.
If you want to reach us, www.joinvaci.com. You can find us there. Links on the bottom as well to get in contact with the team. Again, we're all working to one common goal. We want to give you all basically the ability to see who are these individuals that are behind the scenes doing things. So my last piece that I would say to you, Brian, is thank you for letting me come here with you. Today was really more about just sharing and talking about things. Usually we'll kind of put out some information about a claim specific, but this is your life, right? Without these fundamental things that we've talked about, right, we won't be able to actually file a claim and be successful. But I would say, at least on my behalf, and my team champions, I'm grateful to you for letting me join you today, highlight them, because really I serve them. They are the ones that are doing it, and they allow me to be able to have this conversation here with you today. So I'm thankful for that, and I'm looking forward to showcasing all the other teams that we have, because the reality is that we want to be able to serve and meet you where you're at. right? Maybe you might want to work with Brian, or maybe you want to work with me. The point is, you're going to work with someone here because we all want to meet you where you're at and work with you and give you the option, because that's how you truly scale. So this movement and this pivot is about giving you the option to say, hey, look, if Team Champions is the way you want to go, great. If the Increased Hunter is the way you want to go, great. The point is, get with us, because at the end of the day, we're VA Claims Insider, right? Make no mistake about it. We might have different teams and do things a little bit differently, but the goal, the mission, and what we do remains the same. And hopefully this platform and the shift you're doing, Brian, to share your platform with us now, I'm thankful to you and for the other VMCs and coaches here at VA Claims Insider for what you're allowing us to do.
You're very welcome, brother, and I'm proud to serve with y'all. That's all we have today, fellow vets. Again, if you're watching live, thank you. It's an honor and a blessing, and thank you for your service. If you're watching the recording, I hope you enjoyed this. Really, I hope you enjoyed it. Go back, listen again. There may be some nugget in here that you need to hear multiple times. And if you're not ready to take that half step yet today to get help, that's okay too. Okay? Maybe you're not quite ready yet, but keep following along, keep tagging along, because eventually you're going to make that connection, okay, between your heart and your brain. That connection is going to be made, something's going to click, and something inside of you is going to say, I'm here for a reason, I'm here to fulfill a purpose and a calling, my life matters, it's time to change, okay? It's time to change. So thank you all again very much. I very much appreciate you. Thank you, DP, brother.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you, brother. Love you, man. Love you guys out there. We'll be back with more.
Love y'all. Be good.